Well, good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm glad to welcome you all here, both here at the International Comparative Law Research Center and our audience online. Here today, we are with Anna Joubin-Bret, the Secretary of the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law, and also Director of the International Trade Law Division in the United Nations Office of Legal Affairs. We are very happy to have you here for our public talk, which is actually a part of our Women of International Law project that is dedicated to the journeys, insights of outstanding women within the field. To me, it's actually a very special event because I already had an honor of interviewing Anna earlier, but that was a COVID year of 2021 during our summer school on public international law, and we had to hold it online. So I'm very happy that you're finally here in person at our beloved library. By tradition, in this project, we begin with personal journeys, professional paths, and after that, we'll continue from the questions on my side, from the audience here in the room, and the online audience. So we are very much looking forward to hearing your reflections, and without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here at the International Comparative Law Center. It's an amazing opportunity for me, especially because you were recalling our earlier contacts. We had early contacts through UNCITRAL, through the participation of the ICLRC in the work of UNCITRAL as experts, as observers in different working groups. You had also very kindly invited me to join the summer school, more in the area of investment law. And so being here in person, being here in this beautiful library, and also with all those joining online, it's really a treat, a privilege for me. So thank you for that. So I will follow your guidance and your focus on women in international law. And of course, before being an international lawyer, you're a woman. And I started my early years. I lived for many years in Thonon-les-Bains, which is close to Geneva. So it's a city at the border of another country and not far from another one. So this crossing borders is something that has been always very present in our early life. We used to go to Geneva for shopping. We used to go to the theater, to music. So crossing borders was not something alien to me. But nevertheless, when I studied in high school, I was more focusing. I wanted to be a lawyer, but I always wanted to be a judge. And I wanted to be a judge because I was particularly sensitized. These were the end of the 70s. That was the time when drugs came more into society in Europe. It wasn't a problem in Europe that much before that. And many youngsters were actually affected by drugs, drug trafficking, etc. And so I had this idea of becoming a judge for young people and helping them, bringing them back on track. And of course, I did anything but. But that's the way. Very often the career goes. You have an idea. You have a drive for something. But at least I started my studies in law, and at the same time, I also studied political science. I wasn't quite sure at the beginning whether I would be more drawn towards political science or whether it would be law school. And I finally chose to go then into the graduate studies in law school. And I was very, very lucky to study in one of the best universities in France, namely in Paris 1, which is Panthéon-Sorbonne. We continue to believe it's the best law faculty. But, one thing for sure, it was there that private international law, international business law, international economic law were taught when I studied, and that was not the case everywhere. In France, you would have, maybe not even a handful of universities that were teaching international law. So I was lucky for that, and that actually brought me then into a postgraduate degree on private international law. And that's where I came across arbitration, because in private international law, you have, of course, the conflict of law, conflict of jurisdiction, but also another aspect, which is dispute resolution and the dispute resolution clauses. And so that was really the focus of my years of postgraduate degrees at the Sorbonne. And I really liked the fact that I could study substantive law, civil law. I'm a civil lawyer, and I could study civil law. I could study contract law. I could study even, the criminal law. To have this substantive basis that you feel sometimes is missing for people who join legal professions without having gone through this grinding machine of contracts and personal and family, and which is really the basis. We even had courses in Roman law, so it was really a very complete curriculum, very complete studies. And I was glad that I could get this substantive law exposure very early on in the studies, and then in my first job. So I started to work quite early, and I started working as in-house counsel in various companies. I was located where we were living. I was just married, and I was living in Grenoble, where my husband had his law firm. And I joined two interesting French companies, one which was a little bit of a crazy startup company, which was working on minute services and photo boxes, instant photo. And the chairman at this time was a little bit of a, I wouldn't say megalomaniac, but close to. Anyway, he decided to sponsor the French team involved in the America's Cup. The America's Cup is a sailing racing competition that takes place every 4 years. And so I was at that time 22 years old, and I was in charge of finding berthing for the ships, buying racing boats, setting up crews, buying masts, and setting up the entire facilities for the team in New Zealand. So further away from home was difficult to find, and it was already international in the sense that we had to contract, to procure, to buy, and establish a presence in a country which was so far away. And for a bunch of sailors that had their own ideas about, what they needed. And so it was a very interesting experience. And then after that, I moved to another French company where I actually set up the legal department because they had none at that time. It was a French company that was working in cable transportation, making cable cars, ski lifts, chair lifts, gondola lifts, funiculars. And so that brought me to the most beautiful places on earth, because we were selling equipment for mountain resorts and for tourism resorts. I went to the Great Wall of China, to Badaling, to sell cable cars. I went to Kunming to bring tourists up to the to the Sleeping Beauty. I sold a cable car for Hong Kong replacement. So it was really a time, and it was also in the 80s was also a glorious time for the economy. Everything was, bubbling and bursting, and we were doing absolutely incredible things. And so that was really the experience I had from my studies that helped me, in a sense, settle into this very business-like world, because I had studied more on the international business law, and from that point of view, it was really very helpful. What I found also quite interesting was that across the different stages of my career, I came across arbitration quite steadily. My very, very first job, and I was still an intern at that time, was to review contracts concluded between a big French company and, for example, the municipal cities of Algiers in Algeria or Oran for electrical equipment. And at that time, one important part of the contract was, of course, that nobody was looking at, was, of course, the dispute resolution part. And that was the only part where I knew something, where I could say, in my view, there should be a mediation clause before we go for arbitration. The rest I had no idea about. But this, I had my view. And I also had to express views about lists. At that time, we had lists of arbitrators. So you had the list proposed by the French company, by our company. And then you had a list of arbitrators proposed by the other side, by the Algerian government. And I was juggling with names without the slightest clue of what, these people had done or had written, or you had only that much time for the research. So I looked at these names, and some of them were very inspiring. And I remember still today very fondly this Austrian judge who was called Ignaz Seidel-Hohenfelder. He's a very well-known academic and lawyer in Austria, and I just liked the sound of his name. So I put him everywhere on top of the list of arbitrators. Well, that doesn't sound very like a good lawyer, but at least, it was a bit of fun. So, that was the first part of my career. And then came the time when I was really racing around the globe way too much, because I had become the director of the export department of this cable car company. So I was negotiating and signing big contracts because it's huge equipment. So in different places, and I was out of home quite a lot. By that time, I already had 3 kids. And when I was pregnant with the 4th, we decided that, I had to try to be a bit less in the planes and a little bit more at home. And I wanted that very much. And so I decided to work or to look for work opportunities in the United Nations as a place where I could be a consultant, where I could bring my expertise to the work the United Nations was doing at that time of international investments, because I was coming from companies that were investing abroad, setting up subsidiaries, looking for tax arrangements, studying the double tax treaties, and also looking at bilateral investment treaties. And so at that time, I found this consultancy arrangement with UNCITRAL. And I was again very lucky, because I arrived there at a time when the program on international investment law was just being set up. It was in 1994, 95, when the first NAFTA cases happened, where the NAFTA was just negotiated, where investment treaties were being negotiated every day. Countries were engaging into the global economy. They were really looking towards attracting investment flows. UNCTAD was studying investment flows and policies, and I was the lawyer in this team, coming up with, studying the legal environment for investment. And again, I think I can say that now because time has passed. But when I first went to UNCTAD with my little suitcase saying, I'm sure that you will be interested in my expertise, the director at that time told me, would you be able to give us an annual review of the changes in FDI laws? Yes, of course. And when I get out, I think, what does FDI actually mean? So FDI, no clue. Anyway, now I know what FDI means and how you can develop a conducive framework for foreign investment. But at that time, I felt that everything was possible, and I didn't stop. I wasn't going to be stopped by a silly acronym that I didn't understand. So yes, of course, can do. So that's what I did for a couple of years, and then they gradually included me into the team, and I became the leader of their international investment agreements program that continues to be still active today, where we developed a lot of studies. We started studying investment treaties, but we also started at that very time to look into investment disputes, to realize that while there was a correlation between these investment flows and the investment disputes, there was also a correlation with the increase in the number of treaties. And so we started digging into the treaties and seeing what commitments states were making and how coherent and consistent they were with other priorities, development strategies and development priorities of the state. So very interesting perspectives at that time. And I think what really helped me there was to see, to have had these different perspectives already, having worked in-house, then working for the UN. And then came a time when I also had the opportunity to go into private practice. And I also thought hard about that because, it's a big jump. And in one of your questions, you're saying, how does it feel in the first months when you're taking a new job? It feels terrible. It feels like you've fallen from another planet and that you will never manage. But then after a couple of months, after some time in private practice, I also understood what being an advisor or lawyer to states, because that's the firm I was working for was representing states in these investment disputes, what that was about, and also about billing, and also about pitching, so all these things that I never had to do before, but I really enjoyed that very much. Where I wasn't totally at ease was that I really wanted to develop my practice as being an arbitrator. Together with being a lawyer, I wanted to have these two hats. I shouldn't say that because we have worked a lot on double hatting to prevent double hatting in the reform of investor-state arbitration. But to me, to be a good arbitrator, I thought I had to know very well what was happening when you're on a legal defense or a legal claimant team, and vice versa. In order to be a good lawyer, you had to know what arbitrators think, how they think, how they prepare themselves, etc. So I really wanted to develop this, and that was not possible in the firm I was working for because they were quite strict about no double hatting. And so I set up my own firm and then developed this experience and expertise in representing states in investment arbitrations, but also being an arbitrator in several cases. And I've always liked throughout my career, I've always liked this versatility, this capability of looking at things from different angles and approaching with admitting that there are different ways of seeing the same reality, of presenting them, and of working around it and with it, but that nothing is black and white, and of course nothing is only white or only black. And then, of course, I had the opportunity as well. At some point came this opportunity of coming back to the United Nations and taking this job and this responsibility of the Secretariat of UNCITRAL. And after leaving the UN, I said, I've spent 10 years in the UN, that's fine, that's enough. And then when this opportunity came by, I thought, no, that one I really want to throw my hat into the ring, which I did, and I was successful I was selected. And there again, I experienced this very first panic of falling from another planet back into planet UN. And mind you, just to share with you this, my very first day in UNCITRAL was the first meeting of Working Group 3, the working group in charge of investor-to-state dispute resolution reform. And as you can imagine, we had a very full room, many, many observers with very strong ideas about what UNCITRAL should be doing. And I walk in there, I knew what the subject matter was, but I walk in there, and the first thing that I had to do as the secretary was to proceed with the election of a chair for this working group. And we spent 2 days without agreeing on a chair. And we had to do something that UNCITRAL never does, which is voting. So I was sitting there, I was absolutely petrified. And I had people behind me saying, no, we've never voted. We don't know how to vote. Oh, we don't have we're not equipped. We cannot do this. Oh, we must do that. So at one point we said, okay, let's go for the vote. Let's organize the vote. And so, as you can see, Working Group 3 and myself, we started on very shaky grounds in UNCITRAL because we had to do something that this organization never does, which is not agreeing by consensus, but having to vote. So here again, it's the time that you need to adjust, and I think the capability of thinking, I didn't know what FDI was, now I do. I didn't know how to vote, now I do. So you learn, and you constantly learn. And that is what I really enjoy very much in UNCITRAL. Looking back at my career, I've spent 43 years working now. So that's quite a lot. I've never been bored. I've never spent more than 10 years doing the same thing. I think having the opportunity or taking the opportunities as they come along and saying, okay, let's jump into something new, but knowing that you have a solid basis, that you have solid knowledge, that you have solid studies, that you have gathered solid experience, and that you have also trust in your ability. And I think that's very important, that you have to trust yourself. And that's something that I would like to say, especially to young ladies, young women. Generally, men are quite assertive in what they know and how they know what to do. Women are much more reluctant to put themselves forward. They don't trust themselves that much. And I think that is really something that's important for your career, is to trust your own abilities. The most difficult thing in life, I think, is to raise children. And you manage. and nobody gives you a diploma for doing this. Nobody says, now you're fit, you can have kids and raise your kids. And you do it, and you do it. You put everything in it. You put all the love you have in it. And to some extent, it's a little bit the same thing with the work you do. You put everything you have in it, and you have to trust yourself, and you have to trust your abilities, and you know that you can. So when this opportunity for UNCITRAL came up, as we discussed, I was the first woman secretary of UNCITRAL, but that didn't really make any difference for me, because I think what is more important is that you are given an equal opportunity. You're given an equal chance, that you are judged by your achievements, by your expertise, by your studies, by what you've done, and not that you're treated like a minority that needs to be given special care. So I always looked at being a professional woman as what I want is equal consideration and opportunity, and not some special treatment. I don't need special treatment. If you want someone with my expertise and with what I know how to do, well, then here I am. If you want somebody who does something else, there are other people out there. But if you want these qualifications, I don't need to be chosen because I'm a woman. What I found very hard in UNCITRAL at the very beginning was that there were lots of different areas of work that had for many years progressed in silos. So you had people who were the insolvency experts. You had people who were the secure transactions experts. You had people who were the arbitration experts. And you had people who knew e-commerce. And that was not by way of looking at international trade law, because international trade law is a whole. You're building an environment, a legal infrastructure is what I always say, for companies. And the companies, they are not only in an insolvency situation, or not only in a conflict, or not only in a discussion with the banks for access to finance. There are issues that are there across the board. And I really wanted to have a global picture, to have a global view of international trade law, and try to not break, but at least make sure that there would be ways of getting out of the silos and of cross-fertilizing, as we say in the UN, from one area of international trade law into the other. And I had that very clearly in mind, but there were areas that I really didn't know much about. I was quite familiar with insolvency law because I had been a judge in a commercial court for some time, where I was unfortunately only dealing with companies in distress. I knew about arbitration, I knew about mediation. There were other areas that I knew quite well about, but electronic commerce, other than knowing that, you can have an electronic signature that doesn't need a notarization or apostille, the UNCITRAL text behind that, I had no idea. And from the beginning, I really wanted to have a good grasp at the substance of the different areas of work in UNCITRAL. And so I put a lot of work into it. I really tried to get into e-commerce. I was also very, very blessed. I was very lucky because at the time when I arrived in UNCITRAL, this move from electronic, I would say 20th century electronic commerce into digital trade happened. And so we were all of a sudden facing new ways of trading, through these new technologies. I'm going to say blockchain, of course, through the blockchain, of course, through all these new means, you could reach the same, you could give certainty to transactions, new players, new actors. Obviously, platforms were developing and mushrooming at that time, but also new forms of corporate structure, and of course, new assets being traded. And we are currently working in our working group 4 on data transactions. Data is a new concept and a new value that is worth billions, that is being traded all over the globe, and which is completely immaterial. And so you need to grasp the reality of these new assets or the digital assets. I'm not going to start talking about cryptocurrencies or stable coins, but all of these new assets or CBDCs, which are emerging and mushrooming, building on technology, that you need to really look at them to see how they fit into the existing legal framework, whether they deserve some special rules, and if so, what type of special rules or special safeguards you need to develop for these new technologies, bearing in mind, and that's what I find so exciting, bearing in mind that what you're doing today will most probably be obsolete in 2 years. And so what you want is to develop something that lasts for the next 20 years. I mean, it's a little bit like the work of a legislator in a country where you're not developing a law for tomorrow. You're developing a law for the next 20 or 30 or maybe 50 years. So that is what I found absolutely fascinating with digital trade and with our journey now into digital trade. And the way I tackled that was really by getting proficient, knowing what this all is about, and not keeping a superficial view of it, but really digging in. Of course, I couldn't do that for everything, but at least, the main areas of UNCITRAL's work I know what this is about. And this was really, I would say, if you're asking me now in hindsight, almost 10 years after I started in UNCITRAL, I think that's what gives me most pride, is to have navigated this movement from UNCITRAL, from e-commerce into digital trade, giving coherence to international trade law, making sure that disseminating it to many jurisdictions, having more and more participation in UNCITRAL working groups, more buy-in into our instruments. In the last decade, or not quite decade yet, but in the last 8 years, we have developed 3 international conventions, 3 international treaties that are selling like hot buns. The Singapore Convention, I was this morning with the Vice Minister of Economic Development, who said the Russian Federation will sign and ratify the Singapore Convention on Mediation. Well, that is a great satisfaction. That is when you say, "Girl, I've done something," or "I've contributed to something." So that is really, great satisfactions. What I will probably not see to an end is the reform of investor-state dispute resolution. But I have one of my pet projects, my really very dear to my heart, which was the establishment of an advisory center for developing and least developed countries in investment disputes, to rebalance a strong unbalance of power and means in investment arbitration, where you always think, okay, the powerful guys are the state, and the poor and the weaker party that needs protection are the foreign investors. The reality in investment arbitration is not like that. Generally, the companies that have invested abroad, that have concluded these contracts with an army of lawyers, who are starting the dispute with an army of lawyers, and then you have an email that is reaching presidential palace at country. And then nobody knows what this is. Nobody knows what investment arbitration is. Nobody knows what ICSID is. What is this Washington place sending me this thing? They want me to defend myself in a case, but I'm going to ignore that. So you see that there's really a difference in the preparedness, in the proficiency, in the capabilities. And that's why I so much think that capacity building support, help in the representation for least developed countries is important. Big countries, they can afford to have their own teams, in-house teams in the Ministry of Justice or the Attorney General's offices. Small countries that have a case every 10 years, what a waste of resources. So what happens is when a case happens, everybody's at a loss, and that shouldn't be. So that I hope to see through, but not everything I've put on track I will see the result, but at least I find that I've put this organization on a good track, at least from the point of view of the Secretariat. Of course, I shouldn't, because let's never forget that in the United Nations, the bosses are the states, and we are only there to service. So we have our little idea about how we want things to go. Now, international law, especially for women, is a very competitive environment. It's extremely competitive in law firms. When you come out of your studies in international law, generally the first port of call is a law firm. And firstly, because, the salaries are much more attractive in a law firm than if you're working for the government or if you're working for, or even if you're working for the UN, for that matter. But it's also a very competitive and very difficult way of entering into a professional life, especially because what makes us women stand out or different is that we also have, or that we have a call. Not everybody has this call, of course, but some of us do have this call of raising a family, having children. And then the question is, of course, how much time does a day have to be available to the family, to the work, to the social life, to the husband, to the parents, you have a myriad over the years, a myriad of people that depend on you, that rely on you, and that of course makes the juggling more difficult. And what I always say is that I strongly believe that as a woman in international law or in law, say, you can have it all, but you cannot have it all at the same time. So there has to be some time where you just, put yourself into a different mode. But then eventually the kids grow out of the house, and then you still have the possibility to accelerate again your career, and or you wait for a longer time before you have your kids so that you have a real career boost at the beginning of your professional life, and then you let it go for a little while. But always thinking about the fact that a career and life is in general is long. 40 years, you can do a lot of things in 40 years. You don't have to do them all at the same time, all at once. And I really think that this is where, as a woman, and again, not looking for a special treatment, but as a woman, you also develop special skills of juggling many things, of being responsible for many things, and being efficient, being quick in your work, not needing too much time to identify what the issues are. And, when I see my kids now, who also have kids, because I'm a grandmother, mind you, I see that they have a very different way of going about raising their children. My children are helicopter parents, which we weren't. they're helicopter parents, the two of them. So it's not only the mother that's helicoptering around, but the father as well. So we look at that with a tongue in the cheek and think, okay, yes, every generation has to do things differently. But I think that there are incredible opportunities in this area of the work, of professional life, and that it's all about seizing them, seeing whenever they come along, grasping the opportunity and trusting in yourself. I'm not so much of a women network person. That's not my charisma. I haven't been very much, in these legal women or arbitration women, because I always come from the point of view that if you're good professionally, you don't need that. However, I realize that in the professional life, men have this advantage of the boys' club. So sometimes having a women's club is also not bad. And that's from that point of view that I joined this initiative of International Gender Champion in Vienna, for the Vienna chapter of the International Gender Champion, because I thought that the UN is a fantastic place to work for young professional women, because we have a very strong commitment to gender equality, to equal opportunities, and we also have a great flexibility for women at different stages of their professional and personal lives, and I wanted this to be better known outside. So through the International Gender Champions, it's a way of promoting the way the UN deals with professional women and putting it out there for others to take an example or to see how it works. To me, you are asking, what lessons or what skills or what qualities are important. I would say that it's the openness, it's the being interested, always being curious about others and other areas, other topics, new topics, and not being, wanting to protect you against all risks from something alien. So being curious and interested, and I really want to say that what has enriched my professional life, as much as my personal life, but what has really enriched my professional life is all the people I have encountered, all the fantastic people I've met, the young, old scholars, lawyers, young women engaged, Victoria, Sophia, Kadir. That is what makes that what I find exciting, what I'm happy to wake up in the morning, because I know that I'll have all these encounters, and that really makes my day. So, and that's where having the opportunity of working in the UN, which is completely based on this diversity, on this, different cultures, different beliefs, different professional backgrounds, all of this together, and having them work harmoniously together is really a fantastic opportunity. And I couldn't say more than of course, nowadays, international law is being challenged. Some believe that, it has gone too far, that it's too constraining, that the basis is not solid enough. I mean, there are all sorts of criticisms that we're hearing. There is heavy criticism against the UN. The UN is really going through a phase where there's a strong deficit of trust into the organization, and that's not only in one region of the world, but in many different regions. And to some extent, there's also, we have gone from a time where the role of the states was being sidelined as the drivers of the economic development, where states are regaining an important role. So that is also something that has really changed in the last couple of years. So for me, it's important to reaffirm and to hammer wherever I can that everything that supports international trade, the legal infrastructure for international trade, is international law. The New York Convention is international law. The Singapore Convention is international law. Model law and arbitration is international law. All of this is international law. Where is this made? In the UN. It's the UN that provides the forum for developing these texts, for developing this harmonious trading together. It's done by states, and most importantly, it's done by consensus. And that, I think, is where it's important to realize that it's really a public good. The UN is really a public good that needs to be protected, cured, of course, of its, shortcomings, but what organization, what institution, what family doesn't have its shortcomings? But I think it's really it's an enduring public good, as we've heard at the General Assembly recently, and I think it needs to be protected as such.
Thank you very much. I think you've painted us a very beautiful picture of a fantastic professional journey. And my first question is actually, what helps you, what habits, what routine help you to be so effective, to be so open to all opportunities? And what helps you juggle all this?
A certain degree of discipline, but also a big degree of fantasy to be ready to what comes your way. Because, there are lots of things that are coming your way during a day, especially when you have many balls in the air, when you're juggling with many. So yes, I think having a flexibility and an open mind, and also to some extent, and I'm repeating this, I don't think that I have a big ego, but I have strong trust in myself. So I'm not thinking of myself as I have achieved this, etc. But I know that I have the capacity, I have the capabilities, and what needs to be done, I can find inside or with those who work with me that have the resources to do. And, there's so many challenges, so many things that come your way throughout a life, throughout a professional life. It's difficult nowadays to think of a professional life as something which is going to be, you're on a highway, you're on point A and you want to go to point B and you will have a straight trajectory on the highway. No, that doesn't exist anymore. And we haven't yet spoken about AI and how this is going to, of course, rattle everybody's cage in the legal profession. But again, you have to look at it as a tool that is given to you with which you can be more effective, achieve your targets better, be more informed, be more open, because you get much more information. So, yeah, I would say that it's the openness and the readiness for whatever comes your way.
Thank you very much. I think it's time to invite the audience to join our conversation. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. My colleagues will come to you with a microphone. I see, lady.
Dear Anna, if I may call you like that, you are so young at heart.
At heart, yes.
Exactly. I mean, it's just amazing to see such a person with us today. And what I would like to say, first of all, of course, I would like to thank you for your statement that women are encouraged to apply to the UN and other international organizations. But what I would like to mention, it's important to have a gender balance. But what about ageism in the organization? Because as we know, the maximum age is 65, and I think it's quite unfair because the population, the world's population, is now very different. And people are quite young at quite a late age, let's say 80, 85 is nothing. So, so many academics at this age, so many presidents, so many judges. So what do you think? Maybe it's time to raise up the age for working in the international organizations. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, it's an interesting question because we're talking discrimination again, right? And I'm not sure I would think in terms of, I would necessarily put myself into an age group and say I belong to the older generation, as long as I'm able to do the same kind of work as more young colleagues who are just out of university and entering into, for example, new subject matters from the digital economy. I think my brain is working just as well as theirs. So I'm not looking at myself as, someone necessarily old or senior. Having said that, I think I would say to the contrary that what is one of the problems we have in the UN is the fact that people are not moving enough. And so by doing that, you're not giving enough opportunity to the younger ones to come to a more senior position when they're still, creative, capable of moving mountains. I'm not capable of moving mountains anymore, and I'm certainly finding it more and more tiring to be traveling around. So I look forward to having something where I travel a bit less and where I don't have to work at odd hours or completely jet-lagged to begin a commission session in New York or, work from Korea where we have an office with 9 hours difference with, and having, so I think, and there are other opportunities outside of the UN, having I consider my time at the UN really like a kind of public service. And now it's probably time for others to serve, to step up to serve. And I wouldn't want to have too many, to become an old person's club in the UN. I think it's quite healthy. There is room for the younger ones to become old in due time.
Thank you very much. We have a question from the online audience. Based on your experience, what is the right time or moment to switch the career direction, especially in the field of international law? What would be a sign for changes?
Well, that is a very, very good question. And that is something that I have been reflecting about quite often. When I began working in international law, I told you about working in companies as in-house lawyer, but also then with UNCITRAL and then as in private practice. I realized that when I began, everybody wanted to be a trade lawyer. It was the beginning of the WTO. Everybody coming out of university at more or less at the time where I came out wanted to become a trade lawyer. And then everybody wanted to be an investment lawyer. And then everybody wanted to become a climate lawyer, because nowadays the investment law is no longer that hype, but you have to be more into the climate. And tomorrow it's going to be everybody wants to be a tech or digital technology lawyer. So I think that you also have to navigate the trends to see where, there's no point sticking to an area of the law that is gradually decreasing in relevance. Of course, if you want to be in something which is relevant, if you prefer to be in your comfort zone, which is, I want to be the expert in that particular area, which is perfectly laudable and perfectly possible. But I was more attracted to things that are new. And so having the opportunity to see new areas of the law that emerge and say, okay, let's take that opportunity. Let's contribute my background, my substantive knowledge of contracts or of liability or of damages or whatever. Let's go and look at climate disputes from that angle and see if it's an angle that fits where my expertise can contribute. So that, and as I said earlier, I've been a 10 years person. 10 years. So I'm reaching the 10 years in UNCITRAL now.
Thank you very much. If we have more questions from the audience, could you give the microphone, please?
So,
it is necessary for
You need for the recording.
We could hear it.
Thank you very much for your speech and for coming here. I was really pleased to listen to you. And in the beginning of your speech, you raised the theme about how arbitrators do think in the process. And I'm really interested to know what is the thought process behind every award, because you have now much more experience, and I'm really interested to hear about it.
Well, that is a question for which I will have to come back and to give you another talk, because we could speak for hours about how arbitration works and how arbitrators work and think. But I think one of the important lessons I learned was that an arbitral tribunal is composed of 3 individuals. And what you have to be able to do is to work with the others. So coming with your own views about a case, which is what you're actually being hired for, you're chosen, you're selected because of what you know, because of your experience, and because of your views, because people know what your views are. And you have to then think about, how am I going to interact? How am I going to establish a dynamic with the others in order to convince them, to not overwhelm them, not be sidelined, So it's a process that is quite fascinating. It's an internal dynamic within the tribunal, but it's extremely important to establish and to work on. So you absolutely need to have a tip-top knowledge about the case. So you need to be super prepared, but on top of that, you really need to look for the human dynamics that will make you relate to the others and be able to, at one point, tilt them over to what you think, or be tilted to what they think if the case arises. But I think that is what I found the most interesting and the most different from when you work in a law firm. You work as a team, and then you have a boss who at the end of the day decides, this is how we're going to present this or that argument. In an arbitral tribunal, you're 3, so you really need to develop this dynamic.
Yes, thank you.
Am I audible? Oh, super. I wanted to ask you about the topic that you mentioned very briefly, AI. And you mentioned many tens of years and many things that you've gone through, like climate, investment law, trade law, and all other hype things. So AI is a hype thing now. Maybe you could elaborate just a little bit on what you think about it and where it is going and what UN thinks about it.
First, the very personal approach to AI. When I started working 43 years ago, we still had telex machines. And we had pools of secretaries who were typing all day what you were dictating into a little microphone. And then one day we got put on our desk a little box with some floppy disk, and we were told, okay, from now on you do your thing yourself. Revolution, right? Did we manage? Yes, we did. Did some jobs disappear? Certainly. Did other jobs emerge? Were they created? Absolutely. So I'm I really strongly believe in human adaptability, the ability to adapt to new circumstances, new technologies, new everything. I really look at it as an incredible tool that will help you be so much more efficient and able to focus on what is really essential, rather than having all this parasite time that you need to invest in gathering information. I'm not afraid of the machine taking over. Even I really believe that, you know, the human brain is something which there's nothing equal to the human brain, and there will never be something equal to the human brain. There will be a capacity to calculate 100 million times faster, or to gather information, facts, and whatever, to compile them, to present them, etc., a million times faster. But that is, and it will always require the human brain. In my view, it's really a tool that is going to make a big change. What is important, though, and that is where the UN comes into the picture, is that it is used for the greater good, and that there is an equal opportunity of access, that there is equal that there is strong governance. And I think that this is something that we missed with the internet. We never had internet governance, and yet the internet has been a complete revolution. And what we're living today is only the internet on steroids. It's the internet plus. So I think that the governance aspect, the equality of access, and the use for the good of mankind and not for other purposes. Again, I know that, and I think we should not be, we have to be realistic. You know, all these technologies first developed for defense or arms purposes before they become available to the public. The internet was first developed by the army to have a means of communication. And what we see nowadays with artificial intelligence, it's also only a little part of what artificial intelligence is being used for. But that is way beyond my pay grade to have an opinion on how to deal with that. But I think that having a forum where you can have conversations and even try to put together some global governance about AI is important, and I don't see a better place than the UN for the time being and for many years to come. So long live the United Nations.
Thank you very much. We have one more question from the online audience. It's actually a two-part question. What changes, in your opinion, would help promote gender equality in the field of international law? And the second is, so I suppose they're connected. How does the UN handle maternity leave and other protections for women staff members?
Well, let me start with the second part of the question. The UN is a fantastic employer because this is really completely ingrained and enshrined in the contracts, in the HR management in the UN. So the UN and different agencies are really a great place for women to work, because you have flexibility, you have a maternity leave of about 6 months, you have a paternity leave of 6 months, which I insist is also a great time for young fathers to build this relationship with their children. Maybe that's why they become helicopter parents. I know now it's because they have 6 months of paternity leave. The UN is really a perfect place, and I'm always saying it's an example, because as a big organization, you could think that there are plethora of people who could come and replace and the UN is extremely, the agencies for which I worked, or the organizations for which I work, and the one the body of the UNGA I work for right now, we are very, very protective of young women, of these hiatus that you have to have in order to bring a child to birth, and then to care for that child. So, it's a good place to work. What to do about gender equality? I think there's no real recipe for that, apart from considering men and women alike, and not, and I insist on that, not considering women as a weak minority that needs special care, needs to be put into cotton wool and, not spoken to harshly to. Not at all. Men and women are alike and should have, in consequence, the same opportunities.
Thank you very much. One more question from the audience.
So I have another, hype question.
Oh.
It's about cryptocurrencies. As we all know, the role of cryptocurrencies in international transaction, especially stable coins, the role of them increase from year to year. And what you personally and United Nations think about it? So is it the future of international transaction, or it is just a strange deviation and we will return to banking soon?
So I don't think there is a view by the United Nations about this particular topic. It's something that we are definitely studying, looking at its, for example, our colleagues in UNODC, which works on drugs and crime, are looking, of course, at cryptocurrencies when they affect money laundering and that kind of criminal behaviors. For us, we are looking at them as so we're not looking at the currency itself, but rather at the transactions. So I see that, and it's really a personal view, I see that as one alternative way of paying that is going to stay, because it's directly linked to digital platforms. And digital platforms are replacing a certain type of marketplace. They are they are providing financial services that banks used to have a monopoly over. The banks will continue to have their role, but they're also more and more going digital and offering digital currencies, digital portfolios, investments, etc. So I think that it is a phenomenon that is not going to disappear. It's not a hype that it's not a hype because it's grounded on one reality, is that you need money to move faster, and you need it to be ubiquitous, and you need it to be really there to be a tool or an accessory to this digital trade. So digital trade I see growing digital currencies are, in my view, part of digital trade. So I would explain it like this. It's not something that, in my view, is going to disappear. And I think that what we're seeing now with the development of stable coins and of the interest of different governments into these new currencies is, to me, a testament that it is being taken seriously and not like something that is just, I could say we've seen some hypes that are not really, that don't have a market success. For example, these Meta goggles, etc. I shouldn't say Meta, sorry, I said it. But these goggles and this augmented reality, etc. That is something that was a hype 10 years ago, and we see 10 years later that it's not really catching up, that there's no real market for that, apart from maybe the video gaming or some niches. But it hasn't taken over the economy. Having said that, I think that these currencies, these new forms of payments and of instant payments and of currencies, that is something that will last. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in 10 years I will be reading about in The Economist about all this failure of the crypto, etc. And I will realize that I was wrong.
Okay, I think we have time for one or maybe two questions, if there are any. Yes, please. Yes, the microphone, please.
Thank you so much. Anna, thank you very much for coming to us for this speech. I have two questions, and they are not pivotal, and they are both about the UNCITRAL. The first one is, what's the happiest thing happened to you as the Secretary General so far? Let us call it this way. And the second one is, what is the most complicated topic to work with for you at the Secretary General? Thank you.
Happiest moment at UNCITRAL? Plenty. As I was saying, the adoption of the statutes of the Advisory Center, I could have screamed with happiness. I did not. But that's really something that was so dear to my heart, that seeing this come to fruition is important. The way we have navigated the COVID crisis, the way I see the team working through the difficult financial and liquidity crisis we're going through, and seeing all these professionals saying, okay, now is the time. It's a little bit, now is the time to show that you care for the UN and for what it stands for, right? And many people are doing that, and that is a great satisfaction. Developing new work projects that are coming our way, launching new partnerships with states or with yes, I think there are plenty of really very good moments of great satisfaction. I should have prepared in advance so that I would have one that sticks, but I don't. And the most difficult topic, I think the most difficult for me, what I find, or there are two difficulties. One is to continue to have a global picture of what is going on in international trade law when there's so many different developments in so many different areas. So it's this holistic approach that requires really, sometimes you fry your brain around it. And the other, I would say that's mostly this, having an idea of where this is going, thinking ahead, knowing that you have all these different players and actors and stakeholders in a room, in an UNCITRAL meeting. You have to imagine 100 state delegations most of the time composed of different ministries and experts and supporting, practitioners. Then you have to imagine that you also have these non-governmental organizations, for example, the ICLSD, or, for example, other think tanks, research centers. So all of this is, there's so many different elements and different, to get a picture of what they could be all together is really something that I find hard, and that is constantly challenging and constantly destabilizing, because you enter a working group or a commission session thinking, okay, now I think this country, that country, that country should be happy with this idea. And then all of a sudden you realize that they're not happy at all, and they don't want to do this, and they don't want to do that, and that they're fighting against this or the other project. Sometimes you see things coming, sometimes you don't. And so it's this unsettling aspect, but it's also what makes it so interesting. Otherwise, it would be boring.
Last question, I think, and it will be time for us to wrap up. Unfortunately, Anna has a tight schedule.
Anna, thank you very much for coming for this inspired speech. I remember when I first time met you during that UNCITRAL meeting when election was. Yes, and I thought, wow, how they will manage this situation. And then since that time, I thought about have a chance to welcome you in Russia, how to have an opportunity to talk with you about different topics. And I'm really glad that today you are here, that we had summer school, but unfortunately COVID situation didn't... we had not an opportunity to welcome you here, but today you are here. Thank you very much. My question is not about UNCITRAL. You said that you're a 10 years person. And so do you have any plan what to do next 10 years now?
That is a very good question. I think I would like to really build on this last part of my career. I would like to continue to work with states as advisor, and I would like to go back to arbitration and mediation, because I really strongly believe in this way of settling disputes. I'm a fan of mediation, as you probably know. And maybe one of the things I'd like to do is to continue to propose or present or strengthen mediation as a credible option, not for everything, but for a number of disputes. I think there are good ways of doing that. I would like to do that. Yeah, I'm not keen on going into academia. I would probably not have the patience for, the academic research, the thorough digging into things. But I'm looking forward to continuing to be active and to build on these wonderful relationships that we have developed over the years with so many people, and to continue to have an opportunity to see, meet, exchange, and work together.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this fascinating story, for answering our questions. And as a tradition, we ask our guests to give direct advice to young international lawyers. Some of them are here in this room, and some of them are watching us now online. And please. Trust yourself. You have incredible opportunities and abilities that you have developed during your life as students and your early career. You can build on that and do that. Be
really trust in your abilities and be open to others as much as you can, because that is where you learn most from. I hope you have the opportunity to work in international law and to see and experience the great diversity of legal thinking and legal practice across the globe, because that's really very enriching and very satisfactory. Well, thank you very much for spending this time with me and listening to my monologue. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming to us. I would like to thank once again our guests in the room, our guests online, and see you on our next events.